Today, I'm going to explain a horror fantasy movie called The Hole. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with a single mother, Susan, moving to a small town with her two sons, 10-year-old Lucas and 17-year-old Dane. It turns out the family has been constantly moving around for some reason, and they previously lived in Brooklyn. Dane is very upset about leaving his friends and old life behind in the city. However, Susan urges him to give their new home a chance and assures him that he will adjust soon. While the family is moving their belongings, Dane scares the life out of Lucas with a clown mask. The little boy, who is terrified of clowns, immediately complains to Mom about it and earns his brother a scolding. Dane doesn't seem to care, but he instantly becomes nervous when he notices his attractive neighbor Julie relaxing on her porch. The next morning, Susan leaves for work, warning her sons not to cause any trouble. Afterward, Lucas asks his brother to play with him, but the latter is too busy gawking at Julie from his window. An annoyed Lucas then approaches Julie and begins to introduce himself while Dane observes them. They chat for a while, and the little boy abruptly spills out the fact that his brother has a crush on her. Upon hearing this, Dane gets very angry and starts chasing his brother to teach him a lesson. They soon end up in the basement, where they accidentally knock over a shelf. As the two attempt to clean up the mess, they come across a strange trap door on the floor that is locked with several padlocks. The curious brothers begin looking for its keys, which they eventually find inside of a can. Next, the two open the padlocks and discover a pitch-black hole inside. They drop some nails into it to measure its depth, but there's no sound of them hitting the bottom. The brothers then tie a flashlight to a doll and lower it into the hole using a rope. However, the light quickly fades away and something forcibly pulls on the doll, causing the rope to break. This leaves the brothers baffled, and at this moment, Julie arrives and asks what's going on. They show her the hole, and she becomes interested as well. Julie comments that maybe it's just a deep hole that the previous owner, Creepy Carl, might have dug. But they still want to investigate, so they lower a hand camera inside the hole to film it. Afterward, they check the footage in the living room, but all they can see is a bright light coming through a wall. At this moment, Susan returns home, and while the trio greets her, a creepy eye briefly appears on the screen. The next morning, Lucas goes to attend his first day of school, while Dane and Julie head out to explore the city. The two stop by a cafe for lunch, where Dane tells Julie about his life in Brooklyn. He then notices her unique necklace and asks if it's a gift from her boyfriend. However, Julie just laughs this off and reveals that it's actually from a friend. In the afternoon, when Lucas returns home from school, Susan calls Dane and asks him to come back soon. She then rushes to work, leaving her younger kid all alone. Later, when Lucas enters his room, he notices a horrible clown doll that terrifies him. He assumes it was put there by his brother and decides to place it in Dane's bed to scare him back. Meanwhile, Julie is in a restroom when she notices a little girl crying in a stall. She decides to check on her, but the lights suddenly go out. The door also becomes locked, and the girl slowly begins moving in her direction, freaking Julie out. But before things get any worse, several girls enter inside and the lights turn back on, prompting the scary thing to vanish. Elsewhere, a curious Lucas makes his way to the basement and opens the trapdoor. He asks if anyone is there, and soon hears the sound of footsteps and bells around him. When he turns around, he's startled to see the creepy clown from earlier in the basement, winking at him. A terrified Lucas attempts to flee, but the clown blocks his path and throws several glasses at him. Regardless, the boy is able to escape the basement and notices the clown attempting to open the door from the other side, but it quickly stops. Moments later, Dane returns home, and a terrified Lucas tells him everything that happened. The two then go to the basement together, but the creepy clown is no longer there. Instead, they see a little girl playing, who seems to be the same one Julie saw in the restroom earlier. She claims she doesn't want to die, and the brothers are alarmed to see blood dripping from her eyes. The girl then leaves the basement, and the brothers also follow her, but she soon disappears. Outside, they meet Julie and ask if she saw a little girl, but she denies it. The three then return to the basement, where they notice the girl crawling like an insect into the hole. The trapdoor suddenly slams shut, leaving them baffled by what just happened. Next, the trio arm themselves with helmets and other items. While waiting for the girl to emerge, they speculate on what the hole could be and assume that it could be an entrance to hell or something similar. After a long wait, they eventually fall asleep and only wake up when Susan invites them upstairs. The trio decides to lock the trapdoor, but discover that the padlock is no longer present. Terrified, they drag a massive iron cabinet and place it on top of the trapdoor before leaving. The next morning, the trio returns to the basement and is shocked to see that the cabinet has moved and the trapdoor is also open. A frustrated Dane hammers nails into the trapdoor, hoping to prevent it from opening again. Spooked by these bizarre events, he then asks Julie to take them to creepy Carl so that they can find out more about the hole. In the afternoon, they arrive at an abandoned glove factory and reach a room filled with lights where creepy Carl is trying to fix a light bulb. When they question him about the hole, the old man suddenly freaks out, claiming that they should never have removed the locks. He then reveals that the hole contains nothing but darkness, which will come for everyone and kill them. Upon hearing this, the kids believe he's crazy and decide to leave, but Dane accidentally leaves his sketchbook behind. Later, at home, Susan informs the kids that she will be going out for a few days, so they will have the house to themselves. The children don't want to be alone, but they're too afraid to tell their mother, so they reluctantly agree to stay there alone. Around midnight, the nails hammered into the hole rise up on their own, and the trapdoor swings open again. Elsewhere, as Carl is scribbling on Dane's sketchbook, the lights around him begin to explode one by one. Carl exclaims that he's not finished, but the room goes completely dark. Immediately after, he is seemingly attacked by something, and only his screams are heard. The next morning, Dane realizes that he has left his notebook at Carl's place and goes back to retrieve it. Upon his arrival, he notices that all of the bulbs are destroyed and the man is nowhere to be seen. He then grabs his notebook and finds that it's completely scratched up. Dane later tells Julie about this, and they decide not to go to the basement anymore. She instead invites the brothers to swim in her pool today, which they accept. Later, the trio is seen swimming in the pool and having fun, but then Dane notices a figure in the distance that quickly vanishes. He quickly gets out of the pool and discovers several shoe prints nearby. Julie claims it's probably her father, but Dane doesn't think so. While the two are busy inspecting the shoe prints, Lucas is alone in the pool and is suddenly attacked by an unseen force. He begins screaming in horror, prompting Dane to rush to his aid. Once the little boy is pulled to safety, he reveals that it was the clown again who attacked him underwater. Julie says that still sounds like my dad. Later that night, Lucas is sleeping soundly when Dane notices a small handprint on his brother's leg. He thinks it looks familiar and searches through his sketchbook in his room. Sure enough, he finds a similar handprint, so he tears all of the pages and arranges them on the floor to form a puzzle, but before he can figure out what it is, he hears an eerie whistle. Dane then goes to the dining room and finds a letter on the table from his dad, who is imprisoned in New Jersey State Prison. The letter says, "Hello, boy," which scares the life out of him. Believing his dad is nearby, Dane grabs a bat to confront him when he shows up. Moments later, Lucas wakes up and goes to the living room, where he sees a cop standing there. The cop says he's looking for a girl and hands him a photo of two girls standing side by side. When the officer turns around, Lucas is horrified to see his mutilated skull. He immediately approaches Dane and shows him the photo while explaining about the officer. The two then head to the basement, where they witness the cop crawling into the hole. Dane looks at the picture and notices that the two girls are wearing the same necklace as Julie. Elsewhere, Julie is sleeping in her room when she is suddenly haunted by the same girl. She pleads for her help, but Julie rushes outside and soon comes across Dane and Lucas. In a shocking turn of events, Julie reveals that she has finally recognized the girl as her childhood best friend, Annie. She describes how she and Annie were playing on the tracks of an old roller coaster when an accident happened and Annie fell to her death. During the incident, a police officer attempting to help also fell and died. Julie believes that all the bizarre incidents are happening due to her, so she decides to go back to the amusement park and confront her past. Shortly after, Julie finds Annie sitting in the same spot where she fell. They reminisce about the old days, and the dead girl accuses her friend of causing her death. Julie tearfully apologizes, explaining that she was scared that day. As the two continue chatting, Annie starts to fall again, but Julie grabs her hand this time and admits that she's no longer afraid. This finally makes the ghost of Annie disappear, and Dane shows up to comfort a distraught Julie. Meanwhile, Lucas is in the garden when he hears Dane's voice calling him into the basement. The naive boy heads there, only to find the clown doll waiting for him. The basement trapdoor also suddenly slams shut, and Lucas trips in his panic. Following this, the two engage in a scuffle, and the clown repeatedly strikes Lucas with his tiny apartments. Bonjo's gonna bop ya. But the boy manages to free himself and moves out of the way just as the clown lunges at him. This causes the clown to crash into the spinning blades of a fan, finally shattering into pieces. Moments later, Julie and Dane return home to find a happy Lucas, who explains everything that happened. He also declares that he's no longer afraid of clowns. The trio then theorizes that the hole manifests their deepest fears when they look into it. When the others inquire about his fear, Dane responds that he's not afraid of anything. Regardless, it is not safe here anymore, so Julie suggests that the brothers spend the night at her place. Lucas then returns to his room to pack his belongings, while Julie and Dane begin to examine Carl's sketches. Shortly after, they finally put all the sketches together to complete a puzzle and realize it depicts a man dragging a boy. This terrifies Dane as it dawns on him that his brother is in trouble. The two immediately rush to find Lucas, but he is nowhere to be found. A confused Julie then asks what's going on, to which Dane finally admits that he's afraid of his father. It turns out the man abused his family for years, which is what landed him in jail. This is the reason they've been moving from city to city, hoping their dad won't find them. Dane is certain that his father has led Lucas down the hole, so he decides to go there and face his fear. Following this, he jumps into the hole and floats for a few minutes until he sees buildings around him. He then notices Lucas asking for help through a window. Dane heads towards his brother and ends up in a room that exactly replicates his living room from when he was little. Inside a closet, he meets Lucas, who says that Dad used him as bait to lure Dane into the hole. Dane understands this and notices a ladder that will take them out of the basement. He helps Lucas climb it to safety, but before Dane can escape, he's grabbed by his father and pulled out of the closet. Next, the boy confronts the monster representing his father, who starts hitting him with a belt. Dad accuses him of allowing Lucas to take the beatings for him when they were younger, but Dane reveals it's not true while counterattacking his dad. He reveals that he's a grown-up now and is no longer a child who is afraid of his father. With each insult Dane throws at him, his dad shrinks and weakens, eventually resembling a normal, limp man. As this happens, the surroundings begin to crumble, and the floor beneath them starts to collapse. This leaves Dane and his father stranded on an island under a ceiling fan. Dane pulls himself up to the fan with a belt before delivering a final blow to the door with the buckle. The strike causes the floor to collapse, plunging his father into the void beneath. After conquering his fear, Dane climbs the power line and returns to his world, where Lucas and Julie are waiting. They immediately close the hatch, but have nothing to lock it. At this moment, Susan unexpectedly walks into the basement and notices the trapdoor. Although the kids try to stop her, she opens it and sees only water and gas pipes. She doesn't think much of it and proceeds to head upstairs. Lucas asks Susan what scares her, and she responds that the only thing that she feared as a child was a monster she thought lived under the bed. As soon as she says these words, the trapdoor opens again and the movie comes to an end. Bonjo's gonna bop ya. Subscribe for more videos like this.